Good evening once more. This session will be on carbon trading. And to commence the session on carbon trading, I'd like to invite Dr. Rahul Marathe, the session chair for this session. And he's a professor in the Department of Management at IIT Madras. And his research focus areas include data analytics, game theory, and operations research. He obtained his PhD and MS from Iowa State University in Industrial Engineering and Statistics. And his BE is in Production Engineering from Mumbai University. So let us welcome Dr. Rahul as he takes us throughout this session. Thank you.
Very good afternoon to all of you. Very happy to see all of you. Very happy that we have very, very good speakers. So I know I'm standing between you and them, so I'm very aware of that. So I'm going to keep my part to only questioning. So Eli Goldratt, the famous author of The Goal, wrote that every organization should exist only for one purpose, and that is to make money. He said that the most important objective for an organization should be to make profits. He defined obviously profits as monies on top of the expenses that you get. And he said that is existential for any organization. If you don't make money, you simply won't survive. Victoria Woods, another famous author, she went one step ahead. She emphasized the importance of financial planning and well-being by writing a book which was very simply titled, "It's All About Money, Honey." So this session, we are going to focus on the market side of it, the business side of it, the money side of it, money side of the energy. This objectives of achieving climate goals, net zero, essentially hinges on the commercial part of the process. Breakthrough technologies required to bring these climate goals will not be possible if we don't build robust financial markets, financial measures, which can help deploy these technologies, which will actually be beneficial to all of us. Simple things like reaching the 1.5 degree or 2 degree warming targets will require huge investments, and we have to find some mechanism to bring these investments into the businesses. One of the ways is to build carbon markets, and that's what the discussion of the session is going to be. So very simple, we are trying to build a market where a ton of carbon dioxide equivalent can be commoditized, can be tradable as some emission allowance between the two parties, right? Why is this important? Task Force on Scaling Voluntary Carbon Markets very recently came out with a survey which was also participated by IIF, Indian Institute of International Finance, and McKinsey. They estimate that this carbon market is going to be worth $50 billion by 2030 itself. So we are talking very serious investments, right? McKinsey goes on to says that the global demand for carbon credits will reach up to 2 gigatons of carbon dioxide by 2030 and 7 to 13 gigatons of carbon dioxide by 2050. So this is the demand for it. The supply side, there is an estimate that generally this kind of demand of 7 to 13 gigatons of carbon dioxide credits will be matched by a potential annual supply of 8 to 12 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent, right? So there is this huge question of supply demand matching of carbon credits also that we need to worry about. One of the ways to achieve supply demand matching is pricing. So one of my first question to all my esteemed speakers is going to be, how are we going to, or how is this carbon market going to discover the pricing? Regulator has to be worried about this pricing to be a fair pricing. Now, fairness in a market which is clouded by uncertainty is going to be very difficult. So how are we going to discover this carbon pricing is going to be a very, very important question, and that's the first question that I have for my speakers. We definitely know that there are two approaches, the offset approach and the ETS approach. Offset approach, we all know it is essentially we are going to offset the emission by having some projects which are well-defined projects, and we are then going to say that, well, these projects are going to be funded by the money that we get from carbon credits. And then the carbon credits are going to be sold as a difference between the baseline and whatever is achieved after the offset project is implemented. Which makes me think that everything then hinges on how do we define what is baseline. So my next question in terms of the offset market is how are we going to have how are we going to have an accurate or unbiased measurement of this baseline? Who defines baseline? Because I'm a student of game theory, and a rational player will always take decisions based on their objectives, right? So their objectives may not be the objectives that are beneficial to the entire market. So how are we going to then have this clear definitions of baseline or even the secondary, right? I mean, how are we going to then say that this offset project benefited by this much of emissions, and then the difference can be traded, right? So my second question is how are we defining baseline? There are lots of technicalities. Additionality is a very important consideration in the offset market. So how are we going to define that this offset project actually reduces emissions beyond the business as usual? And all that hinges on essentially what I believe is the definition of baseline. Second approach is obviously the ETS approach. In ETS approach, which we are only beginning to see in our geographies, right? On a very important questions there also, but what interests me or what I'm really curious about are the uncertainties, right? The research that is going to research and technologies that we are going to require to reduce carbon from the atmosphere, we are going to do this through multiple techniques, multiple projects, requires huge investments over a long period of time, which brings in a lot of uncertainty. So I may be required to invest on these today without really knowing what am I going to get 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because some of the approaches that we generally know are mostly nature driven, right? I mean, reforestation or how much deforestation have you avoided, and essentially how are we reducing methane from landfills. These are not short term projects, and the moment we have a elongated timeline, the uncertainty in this whole project is going to increase. So my third question to the panelist is, in this carbon market, how does one plan the investment knowing this massive uncertainty in the market? And therefore, so once again, let me say those questions again. First is the unbiased definition of the baseline. Second is the discovery of the prices. How are we going to discover carbon credit prices? And third is how do we deal with uncertainty? And obviously, the overarching question as a student of economics is, how do I make this carbon market as a complete market which is devoid of any arbitrage opportunities, devoid of any market friction? How do we go towards that? So that's my questions to the panelist. What I'm going to start with is we have a very young researcher working with us, Oves. He has done some data analysis using WEF data, the World Economic Forum data. So he has some interesting results to present, and post which I will request the speakers to come and talk about their perspectives. So, Oves.